Welcome to the show. Tuesday, and an unusual week this is. We've talked about it. I'm Sean Stiers. He's Vince D'Addario. Marcus Freeman press conference today. We've got plenty to talk about. Notre Dame quarterback CJ Carr, backup quarterback Kenny Minchey, some other news and notes coming out of the first press conference this afternoon. We talked about this yesterday. Usually his press conferences, once we get into the season, are going to be on Mondays, but because the game's on Sunday this week, it's on Tuesday, yada, yada, yada. I don't know how many people actually care about that, but that's just the way it is.
Well, a lot of people, because a lot of people were expecting answers yesterday, and people had to be kept reminded that, okay, well, not going to get any. You got to wait until today.
Right.
And, an extra 24 hours, because we will all be waiting an extra 24 hours for Notre Dame to play a football game.
Got some questions piling in the YouTube chat as we speak. Some guy with a handle, the Tooth Fairy. I don't know if I've seen this one before. Was in here early. He said, "Where's everyone's at? I was informed that this was the best Notre Dame podcast chat. Your reputation precedes you, Vince. Like you've got everyone fired up in the in this IB podcast chat."
I mean, he's not wrong, and the information you got was spot on. I sourced it multiple times. And it's true. It's the best podcast chat out there. So I hope the Tooth Fairy is still in here. Oh, he is. Says hello, gentlemen.
There he is.
You go. Welcome, Tooth Fairy.
Yes. Good to see you.
I want to ask about the Tooth Fairy. I'm going to go way off topic here. Are you the Tooth Fairy? Are you a hockey fan? Are you just a mythical creatures fan? Like where did the Tooth Fairy come from? I'm curious.
That photo looked like some kind of mummy or something.
Yeah,
his the photo that he uses there, kind of creepy.
There's a lot of questions that I.
By the way, here's a question I have. Speaking of creepy,
okay.
I ask this every time, not every time, but I asked it over the weekend. When the new previews for movies come out, why are horror movies so popular right now? Have you noticed that? It's like comic book characters and horror movies are like the two things that remain consistent. You can't get a good comedy anymore, but it's horror movies and comic books. I don't get the horror movie thing.
It's a great question. That's a great question. I am not a horror movie type of guy, so none of those interest me. And it's like constant over and over and over again. Doesn't do it for me, Sean. Doesn't get me out to the theater. I'll tell you that.
Me either. Like I went to see. Have you seen Sinners? The Michael B. Jordan. It came out, I think, in the spring.
Okay.
Michael B. Jordan. It was a Ryan Coogler film. I don't know if you know who Coogler is. He's the guy who did all the Creed movies and all that. He's done some other stuff, but yeah, it starts off just like it's like your run-of-the-mill movie, and then about 45 minutes or so in, it becomes a vampire movie.
Okay.
And like I'd heard all this buzz about that, so I went to see it by myself because my wife is like very like she has nightmares if she sees any of this. So I had to go see it on my own. I watched it again on one of the premium channels over the weekend. I think it's good, but I don't like it's not what all the people that had Haley Steinfeld in it, just married Josh Allen and all that.
Do you know her?
Anyway, big digression here at the start of the show.
What we do.
Football. That's right. Football is what we're talking about. We're 5 days away from Notre Dame and Miami. Kickoff is at 7:30 Sunday night, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens, home of the Orange Bowl, where Notre Dame, of course, beat Penn State in the college football playoff semifinals last season. Our game day coverage this Sunday starts at 3 o'clock Eastern time here on Sports Radio WSBT. They're going to be on before every Notre Dame football game all season long. You've got Tim Growell. You've got Jimmy Irizarry. They'll be on for all 3.5 hours before the Irish take on the Hurricanes Sunday night. Eric Hansen, Tyler Horker will join in for a little bit of analysis, and they'll have special guests as always as well. Tony Rice, Mike Golick Jr. among the guests for this week's show. So stay tuned for Game Day, the revamped Game Day show before every Notre Dame football game all season long. They start at 3 o'clock Eastern time before the Miami game and the Texas A&M game. Sports Radio WSBT, Sports Radio WSBT app, and the Sports Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel as well. I almost made it through before tripping.
That's a lot of information for
It
a
is.
long show. So
It is.
there you go.
All right. We've got a lot of quarterback talk. We've got some questions starting to come into the chat, and we'll kind of wait to address these, I guess, as we go along, because we're going to hear now some comments from Mr. Marcus Freeman on CJ Carr is what we're going to start with. We're going to do CJ Carr this hour. We'll have a little Kenny Minchey in the next hour as well, if I can find the cut that we're going to start with here. There it is. So, for starters, Marcus Freeman talked about how he came to the decision to go with CJ Carr as Notre Dame's starting quarterback. Want to hear it? Here we go.
Hesitate saying this is why I made the decision, because what I don't want to do is look as like a positive for one guy and a negative for another. I think statistically is close to any quarterback competition I've ever been a part of. And I was looking for that to be the reason to make a decision, and it wasn't clear. They were both really, really good statistically. And I just had to make a difficult decision, and then I had to trust my gut a little bit. What I felt like we needed going into week one versus opponent, who will be able to handle that decision the right way. I think all those things played into my decision. But that's kind of it. That's a little bit of gray answer.
He knew that he was dancing on some grays there at the end. He didn't want to obviously step on anybody's toes, Vince.
Well, and I don't blame him, because this was obviously a fairly heated quarterback competition. And when I say heated, I just mean it, went down to the wire,
Yeah.
I'm not saying like they were like at each other's throats or anything like that. I'm saying it went down to the wire. And so you don't want to say all these positive, glowing things about CJ Carr and then insinuate that Kenny Minchey wasn't doing those things. You know what I mean? So you do have to kind of walk a fairly tight line when talking about the situation. And I anticipated that he would do that. I mean, for all intents and purposes.
I mean, you get what he's saying. Doesn't want to, you don't want to say glowing things about one thing, and then, maybe that casts, doubt on the other guy, but you've got to say something about him,
Sure.
So, again, he sort of tap danced a little bit there, but one of the things included in that answer is what Justin is asking about in the YouTube chat. Did anyone else pick up Marcus Freeman's response about choosing a starting quarterback that he considered who would take it the best, like who would take the decision the best? What did that mean? What do you think that meant, Vince?
Oh, I love getting into the mind of Marcus Freeman and trying to decide what he actually meant versus what he actually said. It's a great question, because we do know that certain guys take certain information differently, right? He knows those two guys better than any of us. And so he probably had a good feeling about how, things were trending and how one guy was going to take it based on how things were going, I would imagine. They're both very mature guys. They've both been in the program. I don't think they would have taken it poorly. I don't think that's what he's saying. I really don't. Maybe one would have been a better backup than the other one from a mental standpoint. I don't know.
Yeah.
That we can just kind of insinuate. Maybe that's a great follow-up question for somebody at some point.
Well, we had chances with follow-up questions today. There were plenty of CJ Carr questions.
There were a lot.
Couple.
I didn't pick up on this the first time I listened to it. I'll say that much.
No, I didn't either, because I thought he was saying something else. But then when you hear that part of it, you want to hear it again?
Sure, why not?
Okay. So let me see here.
I'm going to dial in. I'm going to really dial in this time.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. We'll hear the whole response once again about how he came to the decision to go with CJ Carr.
Hesitate saying this is why I made the decision, because what I don't want to do is look as like a positive for one guy and a negative for another. I think statistically is close to any quarterback competition I've ever been a part of. And I was looking for that to be the reason to make a decision, and it wasn't clear. They were both really, really good statistically. And I just had to make a difficult decision, and then I had to trust my gut a little bit. What I felt like we needed going into week one versus opponent, who who will be able to handle that decision the right way. I think all those things played into my decision. But that's kind of it. That's a little bit of gray answer.
Yeah, and that like who'll be able to handle that decision the right way. That is a little bit, but I think the biggest part that I take away, like what they needed going into week 1 and the fact that he had to trust his gut, because he talked about the data, and that, like, especially in today's world, they probably, they had to have every pass charted, like when you see on PFF when they've got those fields and they split it into like 9 sectors, and that they had that kind of stuff where they're like, okay, these passes are over here complete or incomplete, farther down field complete and incomplete, all those different things. So you've got a ton of data, but at the end of the day, I like the fact that he's young enough that he's not necessarily grown up in an analytics world, but he has been heavily exposed to analytics because of who he is, both as a defensive coordinator first and now as a head coach. Just analytics and numbers out the yin yang. But at the end of the day, the coach still has to be able to trust what his eyes say, trust his gut, and going back to the stuff that we were talking about last week as well, trust the input that he's getting from his assistants as well. So I think that he took all that in. And when you look at, like, who's the best guy, and we'll hear some more of the comments from Marcus Freeman, who's the best guy for this job, like, you can see, like the advanced level, I think, that CJ Carr has, his ability to process, his ability, to go up to the line of scrimmage, pre-snap reads, all those different kind of things. I think that had to be part of the deciding factor as well, because I think that he is a little bit ahead, at least a little bit, if not a few steps ahead of Kenny Minchey, just in terms of those kind of things.
He brought up analytics, and we know that they chart everything, just like you said. And the number that I had heard is they both threw right around 1,200 balls in fall camp. That's a lot of balls. And with everyone being tracked, that's a lot of data.
In 2.5 weeks.
Right. That's a lot of data, right? We're talking, routes on air, RVAs. We're talking one-on-ones. We're talking 7-on-7. We're talking team. All of those different things, all charted, all figured out, all the data. Said it was fairly even. Okay, well, if we're to take that as gospel, and why wouldn't we, then you have to start looking at the intangibles. You have to start looking at how you handle the huddle, how you handle the pre-snap reads, the pre-snap adjustments, the coverages, the protections, all of those different things that you can't necessarily track on a data sheet, right? That you just, he said he had to go with his gut. Sometimes when you're coaching and you're watching guys operate and you're watching guys play, by looking who the better guy is in this situation, right? You have to use your gut. You have to use your intuition. You have to use 20 years of coaching experience that you have, or whatever the number is, right? For Marcus Freeman, like, eventually you just have to trust, okay, you know what? I think we operate better with this guy at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
You can't explain it necessarily. You can't put it into words. You can't put it into a spreadsheet. You just know. And I think a lot of that was the case in this particular competition. I think it kind of came down to that to a degree, because everything on paper, it sounds like, was fairly even. Maybe one guy was ahead here, one guy was ahead, whatever. It was even enough that you.
It was even enough that everyone was saying it was even, and that maybe Kenny Minchey was even ahead in the race.
Right. You had to go to the next kind of set of criteria at that point. You don't win football games on paper. And we've all seen that, right?
Look, and the data can look different as what, because, like, I said it yesterday.
Yeah,
stats are for losers, right? And I'm not just, but all this analytics is obviously advanced statistics. And like, sometimes you can't just look at something like completion percentage as an example. What do we know about CJ Carr? Like, especially if you compared him to Riley Leonard, but maybe even Kenny Minchey. This is a guy who is much more adept at completing passes down the field consistently. We know Kenny Minchey has an arm, but how consistent was he able to complete passes down the field versus maybe, like like checkdowns and those kind of things. Where is the completion percentage? Or like, are you making 70% from the field on the basketball court because they're all layups, or are you like 16 to 18 feet and back, or, and even beyond the 3-point line? Like, where are the completions coming from? And I think that has to probably factor into it as well.
I think it's a fantastic point, because on paper, if you're not charting all the locations, completion percentage can look a little bit different. And we know, here's what we do know. We know that CJ Carr is willing to put the ball in harm's way, so to speak, right? Because Marcus Freeman has basically said it. That's what all the sources are saying. He threw more interceptions than Kenny. That is not an opinion. That is not even analyst speak. Those are facts. Those are things you can chart, right? And so he was pushing the ball down the field. He was, trying to squeeze it into small windows. Marcus Freeman said today, and I don't know if there's a cut here, I don't want to step on it, but he basically said that he's a very confident quarterback, sometimes a little too confident.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But
I think that's go ahead.
I was going to say, but those are the things that you test out in practice so that you don't make those mistakes in a game. Right. So, he's a bit of a gunslinger.
Well, and that's what you also have to adjust now, I think, as that competition was winding down and you start ramping up for the season, where now it becomes more about, okay, maybe I've forced this throw a little bit too much, and maybe I've paid the price as a result. So I've got to finally now, learn from that lesson. I can't be Homer Simpson and keeping, sticking my finger in the socket. Don't.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that's why Gino Gaduli said, why is everybody talking about interceptions? Doesn't matter. It's practice. Like, you're learning. That's the whole point of practice. Now, that's way over here versus way over here. I think the truth lies someplace in the middle, right? I mean, it does matter. It also matters if you're learning from it, right? We know CJ Carr is a student of the game. We saw that with our own eyes watching him during spring practice in the indoor facility, because they would record every single play. And after every single throw, he would look up at the big board to see where he either made a mistake or where he did well, so he learned from it. I'm not saying Kenny didn't do that, but I'm saying we know that about CJ. Like, that's who he is. So I personally think he was making throws, putting the ball in harm's way to see, hey, can I make this throw? Can I do this? Can I squeeze it into this window on this particular play?
Yeah.
What does that look like? And again, going up against Notre Dame's number 1 defense, even the number 2 defense, that's pretty good practice.
So Zircon is asking in the YouTube chat, what would you think of this Notre Dame team if Carr goes out and throws for 3 touchdowns week 1 against Miami? Well, again, we're talking about one stat. We're talking about 3 touchdown passes. Are there turnovers as well? Are there interceptions? Or, is there a pick 6? How's the defense playing? All those, 3 touchdowns sounds good, but there's a lot of other things that goes along with it. Like, we would obviously, just looking at that, if the only thing that you saw was 3 touchdowns, you go, oh, okay, that looks pretty good. But what's the completion percentage look like? What's the, again, is he moving the offense efficiently? All those different things. So I don't think that we can look at just that one thing. There's going to be a lot of other things that are going to tell the story, and did he throw the 3 touchdowns, at the end of the game, like Indiana against Notre Dame last year? Not that they threw 3, but you know what I'm saying? Are you getting kind of late garbage time touchdowns, those kind of things? Are they competitive touchdowns? So there's a lot more to it, I think, that's going to show whether or not CJ Carr and or Notre Dame had a good game than just a few touchdown passes.
That was a very, very, very detailed and very good answer. I was just going to say, I'm going to channel Denny Green and say, they are who we thought they were. If he goes out there and throws three touchdowns, because I didn't think that far. He goes out and throws 3 touchdowns. That's exactly who
You're going to feel pretty good.
Yes, that's exactly who I thought CJ Carr was and who this team is. But you're right. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. Fine, Sean, you're right.
Taking the glow. There he goes, taking the glow off 3 touchdown passes again. Just making everybody feel bad about it. Again, 3 touchdown passes would be great, but I also want to know what everything else looks like in between.
100%.
Yeah. All right. I think we got time for one more cut in this first segment, then we'll take a break and we'll continue with some of Marcus Freeman's thoughts on CJ Carr. He where did it go? There it is. What has Marcus Freeman seen from CJ Carr in this last week since he was named the starter?
Yeah, I think there's a natural human element where when you're in competition with somebody, there's a little hesitation to truly just lead as the quarterback should lead, be the leader of that offense. Both of them has done it in fall camp, but I think now there's direction, right? There is no confusion on who's going to be the quarterback to start game one. And so you're going to see that chemistry continue to build. But I know the guys on our offense, like, they're confident in both quarterbacks because they was built through camp, right? That both quarterbacks went with the ones, and but it's great for, I think, our whole program just to have direction moving forward.
Someone had to win, someone had to lose. CJ Carr's the starter now, and I agree with what he's saying. Like, they named him just in time for Miami prep to begin last week. You had to have your number one in place so you could start getting ready for the game, regardless of who it was going to be. You're on mute still, Vince.
Thank you. I am not surprised now that there is a clear-cut starter, that CJ Carr has basically taken over as the starter. You know what I mean? Because it is odd when there's two guys competing for it. Like, are you stepping on each other's toes? Like, what does that look like? It's awkward, I'll say. It's awkward, right? You want to be the guy out front, but you're not necessarily the starter. You know what I mean? So we saw both of those guys leading by example and doing all the things that they're supposed to do, when we had an opportunity to see them. And I have no doubt in my mind that now CJ Carr has taken another step as a leader.
No, none at all. None at all. And I think it's probably, again, having that stability now is just going to be good for the team, getting ready for the opener. Now they know no one has to worry about, is it going to be this guy? Is
right.
it going to be this guy? No one has to sit there and dissect every throw anymore. You can just go out and worry about game plans, focus on the opponent, and get ready to actually beat a team coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I wonder what it's like now for CJ Carr to go up against a scout team as opposed to the first team.
Yeah, exactly.
That's got to be different.
Exactly. Going back to the splitting hairs microscope we were doing with Marcus Freeman, that first comment, Bobby O'Shea said, like I said, maybe he meant Carr handling the decision and dealing with all the media, Miami, first start on the road, etc. You guys are like my wife, analyze too much. That's what we're here for, though.
Well, I think he was referring to the chat on that one. I do think that. But
okay, good.
but to your point, Bobby, I agree with you. I think that is probably what he was referring to. Look, again, it's almost like CJ Carr was bred to be this guy, to be a quarterback, to be, the leader of a team, to be the leader of an offense, to be that guy. So thank you, Bobby. I appreciate that very much.
Clarified that it was the chat. Yeah.
Yes. So I do think that he's kind of made for this, both mentally and physically. And I have seen nothing to make me think differently throughout his time at Notre Dame.
Or it could just be what Father David says in the chat. I really don't think there's anything to it. He was trying to get through an answer without stepping on toes, and that's what came out.
You go.
It very well be.
Yep.
Very well be. Exactly.
No doubt.
Notre Dame and Miami, 5 days away. Sunday night, 7:30 in Miami. You'll hear it right here on Sports Radio WSBT, as well as Sunny 101.5 in South Bend. And you can also, of course, if you're listening for the Notre Dame Radio Network Odyssey app, AUDACY.com is where you can find the streaming radio broadcast of all Notre Dame football games. Tony Simeone and Notre Dame great Ryan Harris with the call on the Notre Dame Radio Network. Take a time out. When we return, we'll hear more from Marcus Freeman, including some of those intangibles of CJ Carr that what we've been about which we've been talking. I'm just stumbling today, Vince, as well as game planning with a much less experienced quarterback than they've had the last couple of years. We'll do that when we return. We continue with Budweiser's weekday sports beat on Sports Radio WSBT with IrishBreakdown.com, along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. We've got some comments from Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman today, talking about the quarterbacks, specifically this hour, a lot of Kenny Minchey, the guy who's going to be the starter, of course. And one of the things that Marcus Freeman talked about today was putting together a game plan with a quarterback who is much less experienced than what they've had the last couple of years with Sam Hartman 2 years ago and Riley Leonard last year.
You're going to, Riley had some growing pains, but you're going to have some growing pains with any first-time starter, and we have to understand that. We can't expect the quarterback, CJ, to be perfect. We know there are some ups and downs that come with that position, that come with being a first-time starter. We got to protect him. We got to protect him in the pass game, right, in terms of our O-line, but also protect him in the decisions we have him make. We can't put too much on his plate because he's got to be able to handle the environment. He's got to be able to handle the crowd, and he's got to be able to handle being his first game versus a big-time opponent. We've got to be able to run the ball. Like, that's something that we know we have to be able to do. And defensively, we got to be able to help our quarterback. We got to get takeaways. We got to be really good on defense and, make sure this isn't a shootout.
I just have a feeling, Vince, that fans are not going to be very forgiving when it comes to growing pains.
No, because the bar is set so high. If Notre Dame was coming off an 8-5 season or something like that, then you know what? Give them some time. And the other part of it is arguably the two hardest games of the season are games 1 and 2. And I think you're going to see. First of all, you're going to see a big difference in the offense in game 1 from what you saw last year. And I also think you're going to see a big difference from game 1 to game 2 because you got a bye week in there as well. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to see kind of the maturation process of not only CJ Carr, but this offense under CJ Carr and what that's going to look like. And Marcus Freeman is absolutely 100% correct. The defense doesn't play well. Doesn't really matter what CJ Carr does. You know what I mean? Like, he needs the people and the pieces around him to play well if they're going to win this game.
Yeah. All those things he talked about. Got to run the ball. Got to play defense. All those things have to happen. It's not just CJ Carr. Now, to Nick A's point in the YouTube chat, he says, given Riley Leonard's lack of experience in the Notre Dame offense going into Texas A&M, is it really that different? Yes, because Riley Leonard was a starter for a season and a half before ever coming to Notre Dame. So he at least had game experience. He had beaten Clemson, remember, the year before coming to Notre Dame. Just a few, was that the season opener? I think it was the season opener, a few weeks before the injury that occurred in the loss to Notre Dame. But like, he had been in some, granted it's Duke, so it's a little bit different, but still, like, he beat Clemson. Clemson is the big boy on the block in the ACC. He had a win like that. And I mean, it's a fair point to say, well, he was learning the offense. Yeah, because that was the growing pains for Riley Leonard. But there was also much more expectation on Riley Leonard because of the fact that he had all that experience and he was coming into this team last year. So there was a ton of expectations on him. People were very impatient when it took 3+ games to get the first touchdown pass this season with a loss to Northern Illinois mixed in. And, so if you're like that, like, how much more forgiving are you going to be because it's a young quarterback out there,
100%. And the difference also in Riley Leonard and CJ Carr is they're two completely different styles of quarterbacks. And Riley Leonard obviously did not have a great day throwing the football in that A&M game. I think he had like 130 some odd yards passing and no touchdowns through the air, but he's able to fall back on his legs, right? I'm not saying CJ Carr is a statue because he's not. He's more athletic than people give him credit for, but he's not going to fall back on his legs if his arm, if the passing game isn't working. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit different, right? Like, you can, if you're Riley Leonard, you can go into a game with, not 100% understanding the offense, still be able to make plays with your legs. You know what I mean? It's different for CJ Carr.
Yeah, he had
quarterbacks.
Exactly. He had that different element that he could fall back on and still find ways, like between guts and instinct and all those different things. But where does instinct come from? Instinct in part comes from the past experience that you have. Like for CJ Carr, that's still high school. For Riley Leonard, again, he had almost 2 seasons. I guess really it was almost 3 seasons by the time it was all said and done, because he played a little bit early. He played the full season, and then he had the injury shortened season in his 3rd year at Duke.
So a lot of time though, like time wise. I mean, he had starts as a freshman, as a true freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior. So
just the ability to have been on the field with those stadiums full of people. This is going to be the biggest crowd that CJ Carr has ever played in front of to this point in his life.
Oh, absolutely.
Riley Leonard had at least been in a couple packed stadiums, more than just a couple, but he had been in some packed stadiums before ever showing up at Notre Dame. This is going to be the first time everything is going to be the first time for CJ Carr until it isn't, so like that's part of the deal. Again, the fact that, to the point about the offense, the fact that CJ Carr has been here for a year and he's been able to absorb all that, and he's not just walking in now and finding himself in this situation, I think that is very beneficial for him. But he has to go through all these things for the first time, like going to the line of scrimmage for the first time and seeing a real defense that is truly trying to stop him, and not just as good as Notre Dame's defense is, not just a Notre Dame defense where after you've been in camp for a couple of weeks, you kind of start to know the tendencies of what they're going to do and all those different kind of things. Now you've got a guy with a defensive coordinator who's new to Miami, who's going to try to disguise some things, going to try to bring some pressures on you. Where can he bring it from? All those different kind of things that CJ Carr is still just seeing for the first time. And at least a guy like Leonard, again, because of the experience that he had, he'd been through some of those things before ever coming to Notre Dame.
Yeah, no doubt. Two completely different places in their careers. I mean, it's almost non-comparable because of the age difference, the experience difference, and the style of play difference. So, yeah, completely different situation.
I am Tenzin. I am the son of Egg, and the YouTube chat says, just tell Carr, speak from the diaphragm. It'll help that throat tremendously. Push it up from the diaphragm. Don't talk from your throat.
That's right. He's ready.
All right. So here's Marcus Freeman on what CJ Carr has beyond just the physical traits that he brings.
He's as intelligent of a football player you'll be around. Works extremely hard in his preparation. He is a guy that just studies the game endlessly to find a way to improve. He's, and this isn't saying he's different than some other guys but I'm talking about CJ Carr. He's a guy that's very confident. At some points, you may be a little bit overconfident, but you want that in your quarterback. You want the quarterback to say, I want the ball in my hands every play when the game is on the line, and I believe that I'm going to make the right decision. And so he has a lot of those intangibles outside of the physical skill set that many people see that you want your quarterback to have.
That's what I want to know, like what those sometimes are. Like sometimes overly confident. Which sometimes are those?
My guess is those sometimes are when he tries to fit the ball into a very small window and it ends up being an interception.
Yes.
Now, again, in an ideal world, you want to be able to try to back a guy off of that a little bit as opposed to try to get him up to it. Notre Dame has had quarterbacks that they can't get up to that, not quarterbacks that they've had to dial back. At least in recent history, you know what I mean? And so that's been the issue. And I would much rather have a guy like this than a guy like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's the what you want as a quarterback's coach, as an offensive coordinator, as a head coach. You want a guy who's confident out there, who's going to make plays. He's going to make mistakes. This is not a giant announcement to everyone. CJ Carr is going to make mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But you're also going to sit back and go, wow, what a play.
Right.
You're going to say that more often than you're going to say, wow, that was a terrible play. You know what I mean?
I think we need to chart the wows as we go through this game.
I agree.
See how many wows we come up with and then measure it against like, you probably shouldn't have done.
I think it's like all caps wows and
Yeah.
lowercase wow. Like, wow, that was awesome. Or wow, what are we doing? You know what I mean?
Like, wow, or was that like wow?
Exactly. So you get it.
Wow out loud. Yeah. So get your wow factor, your wow
Yeah.
charts out for this game.
The wow chart. I think we should revisit the wow chart every Monday.
I think we should. I think it's
Yeah.
that's a perfect thing to chart.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
as the season goes, because then we'll add them up at the end of the season. We can weigh the wows against the bonehead or mistakes or whatever
Yeah.
you call them. Okay, if we're calling the good wow, what are we going to call the bad?
Huh.
The wows and the woes.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. That kind of rolls right off the tongue there.
Wow, woe.
The wows and the woes. I like that.
Then you just have to read your writing.
I know, right?
This is perfect, Bobby O'Shea.
I know.
He says this is the Owen Wilson hour. Wow. I'll have to see if I can find the Owen Wilson wow and use that as a little drop when we go through the wow plays.
And you brought up Homer Simpson earlier. You maybe just have a dope, for like the bad ones.
Wows and the does.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a good one too.
Just from a soundbite standpoint.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. All right, so what would a winning performance look like for CJ Carr?
You want him to make good decisions, right? Is that every play can't be a touchdown. Every play, it can't be a bomb. Trust the game plan. Trust what you see. Be who you are and win this play. Like, I don't want to put a numerical expectation on him. Be the best version of CJ Carr. Make those guys around you better. That's something that he does really well. He raises the play of those guys around him through his words, through his actions, through his competitive spirit. Be that guy. And at the end of the day, don't just win this play, right? Not the last one, just win this one right in front of us.
Just win this play. Trust what you see. Just win this play. I mean, I think it's just that simple, really.
Remember, that was a point of emphasis all spring, all summer, all fall was, forget about what just happened. I forget what the wording that they used, but they were forgetting about what just happened, whether it was good, whether it was bad, and moving on to the next play, which is exactly what you want to do. I think he couldn't have said it better himself. With what they want out of CJ Carr, and at the end of the day, just get a W, man. Like that's all that matters. One play at a time, and hopefully it's a W. That's all you need. That's all you need.
I am Tenzin in the YouTube chat says wow versus woof.
Ooh,
woof.
Okay,
not bad. Not sure where else we could go with that. I think I saw Cindy say yikes. The yikes plays. Not a bad one.
We're gonna have fun with it either way. I tell you.
I think so. Vince is shaking his head. He's doing great radio right
Great radio, yes. You can't hear the beans inside my head shaking up and down.
Yeah.
You're forgetting we're on radio, if I'm being honest. I'm just so used to having the
Just
YouTube
video.
channel. I know.
Sitting here staring
remind
at
myself. I may have to come into the studio a couple of times just to remind myself we're doing this.
That it is radio.
Yes.
Yeah. Carlos says wow versus how. That might get confusing, but that's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
It's got a good ring to it. I like the ring.
Yes.
But we might accidentally, think that we're writing wow when we write how, or we scribble, wrong, or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
All right. Take our final timeout this hour. We'll come back. Haven't really touched on the depth chart. We haven't touched on the depth chart at all.
Right.
We did our depth chart predictions last week, and there's a reason why they released the depth chart today. So we'll touch on that a little bit. We've got rapid fire coming up. We talked about CJ Carr pretty much this whole first hour. We'll have some Marcus Freeman comments on Kenny Minchey coming up in the second hour as well during rapid fire. We continue winding down hour number one, Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Spent a lot of time hearing from Marcus Freeman talking about CJ Carr in hour number one. He'll be making his first career start Sunday night in Miami Gardens when the Fighting Irish travel to Miami. It's getting chippy out there right now, by the way, Vince. Like all this, like I'm seeing just all this.
Oh, the back and forth with the fans?
Going back and forth and all this different stuff. I did an interview with this East Coast show last night, and they asked me about the rivalry, and I basically said what I've said before here. If you have to explain it, to the guys who were playing in it, it's not a rivalry anymore. And these guys were, somewhere between your age and my age, and they were like, "Oh, I still think it's a rivalry." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's because you're old." You remember it. Like,
exactly.
Yes, if you played in those games, which ended in 1990 when Aaron Taylor, who we had on the show last week, was a true freshman at Notre Dame. Sure, if you played in the games in that rivalry, it's still a rivalry to you. And maybe if you were a diehard fan to some extent, it's a rivalry. But I just don't see it as a rivalry anymore when you've played 4 times in the last 35 years.
And they haven't even played that many times overall. I mean, the number is fairly small for as long as Notre Dame has been playing football. They've played Purdue and Michigan State and, Michigan so many more times than they've played Miami. It just got very heated because of the way that series in the 80s went. Because of the blowouts and the, all of those kinds of different things, and save Jimmy Johnson's butt for me. And,
all the fun stuff.
Yeah, all of that fed into it. It was just a very, I wouldn't call it a rivalry. I would call it a heated series is what it was. And then they canceled it. So
yeah. And the reason they canceled it was because it got too nasty.
Correct.
So yeah. Kind of going back to some of the conversation we were having about how like CJ Carr and start number one and in the whole thing. Scott L. Esquire in the YouTube chat says, if you look at the play calls in the game with 5 minutes to go, the staff trusted Riley Leonard to throw the ball and lead Notre Dame all the way down the field. They handed that game over to him. It won't happen in week one with CJ Carr. I completely agree with that. They don't want to have to put this game on the shoulders of CJ Carr. And we didn't really, talk a whole lot about this, but when you hear some of the comments that Marcus Freeman made about the defense has got to play and the run game has got to go and all those kind of things, I don't think he wants CJ Carr gunslinging out there. I think he wants a fairly conservative game plan from a first-time starting quarterback on the road in that kind of environment, especially until and if they're able to take the crowd out of the game. Then maybe you get a little bit more bold, with take the crowd out of the game. You've got a little bit of a lead, those kind of things.
It's interesting because I do think that they are going to rely on the run game primarily early on. If it's at the end of the game and they need to get down the field, they're not going to be handing off the ball. They're going to have him throwing the football. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. And it also depends on how well he's playing and all of those different things as to whether they're going to trust him. I wouldn't dismiss. I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying in general, I wouldn't dismiss the theory that they would ride his arm in a 2-minute drill.
Well, if you have to, you will. But I think that they would rather avoid that if they can. No,
Okay.
you don't agree with that?
Yes and no.
I'm just going on what we
know
know about Marcus Freeman so far.
Okay.
What do we know about Marcus Freeman?
I guess I'm going by what I know about Mike Denbrock, and in the heat of the moment, I think he's going to call the plays he wants to call.
Yeah, but you also know that about Mike Denbrock with more veteran quarterbacks, right?
I get it. I understand. I'm just saying, I don't think he wants to run the ball a bunch.
He might not want to, but he might be instructed to. We've seen those clips before, right? Andre, speaking of which, Andre's asking, what do you want the first offensive play call to be? He says he wants it to be a pass to the great one. I see this. I've seen this question pop up. What's the first play going to be? And all this different. Can you remember what the first play of last year was off the top of your head?
Nope, but we talked about it ahead of time. I remember.
Right.
But I don't remember what it ended up being.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. I think it gets a little bit overblown.
Mhm.
Is my point,
I want an RPO. I want the best of both worlds. I
Yeah,
want
I would
the
take that.
decision to be made
That's
based
probably
on
what we said last year, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, maybe that's the chicken, you know what, way out of it, but that's what I want, and I think that's a good call. Because in an RPO, if you read it correctly, you're never wrong. That's what I want. And I will say this, it's tough to run play action on the first play because play action means that you've established the running game. What have you established in the first
you don't
play?
always have to establish a running game to run play action, though, because, like to Nick's point, if they
Certainly
stack
helps.
the box and you stuff, well, yeah, but if it's the first play of the game and you've got Jeremiah Love in the backfield and Miami is anticipating like the threat of Jeremiah Love and you see them, with the play action to Jeremiah Love, you have to honor that on the first play of
Sure,
the
if
game.
they've got 9 guys in the box, cool, but I'm also not wasting my time with play action. I'm not wasting my time with a fake. If there's 9 guys in the box or 8 guys in the box, we're just going to throw the football. And I'll tell them, we're going to throw it. Here it comes. Like there's no time. There's no point in wasting in play action at that point.
Well, Nick, and, going back to, whether or not you put it on CJ Carr and, these different things, he says they will if they stack the box to stop the run, right? Look, I understand what you're saying, and you want your quarterback to be able to, to make that read and know whether or not you should be running or passing and all those different kind of things. But again, you don't want CJ Carr going out there throwing the ball 30 plus times on the road in game number 1. I just don't see that happening. I would be shocked if they're just winging it with CJ Carr because Miami is loading up the box. I think Notre Dame is going to say, okay, you want to load the box? All right, well, we're still just going to blow you off the line of scrimmage, especially as the
There
game
will be parts of that
goes
for
on.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially at the
They're
end of
not
the
just
game.
going to concede the run because, Miami loads up. I don't think Notre Dame is going to do that.
I agree with as well, and I think weather will also come into play with that too, if it's rainy and all of that.
Yeah.
Because I do think Notre Dame can run the ball when they want to, right? They're not going to be ripping off 7, 8, 15-yard runs every single time, but sometimes you got to run for 2 yards or 3 yards. Those are the things that you have to do. Those aren't plays that aren't successful because sometimes that's just what they're designed to do. So you do have to do that.
Hour 2, rapid fire. We'll have some Marcus Freeman comments on Kenny Minchey and where he is since the news was given to him, last week that CJ Carr would be the starter and Minchey would be number 2. We didn't get to the depth chart stuff, so we'll touch on some of that in rapid fire as well. That is all after 6 o'clock here on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's hour 2 of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com, and that means it's rapid fire time. We're going to start off with some breaking news here this evening / this afternoon. Former Notre Dame quarterback Sam Hartman waived by the Washington Commanders today. Little surprised by that. Vince makes the sign across.
I mean, I guess I am not intimately familiar with the pecking order of quarterbacks in the land of Washington, D.C., but, too bad for Sam. I mean, he was never going to be obviously a frontline starter and all of those kinds of things. And I thought he was a good backup. He's a professional guy, all of those two things, but all of those things, I should say. I looked at Bobby O'Shea, said he threw 2 picks, and I said 2. He's a solid backup. He's got a chance to catch on someplace, depending on what the landscape looks like. And
could still end up on the practice squad in Washington.
Good point.
So
that's a really good point. That's a lot of
waivers and all that kind of stuff. So
he was one of the last ones, right? To one of the last quarterbacks probably to be cut, I would imagine at this point. So yeah, he might get re-signed as
Joe Allen says Estime as well with the Denver Broncos. And he kind of just, he fumbled a few times last year, never really gained any footing. And I think that when you look at the way Sean Payton has kind of done things, they were looking for a different kind of back than Audric Estime. I think Audric is going to catch on someplace because he's a second-year guy with, not a lot of mileage off his treads, even going back to his college days. He was really only a full-time guy for the 1 year at Notre Dame. So I'll be curious to see where he catches on because, again, even if he's only a practice squad guy, someone's going to pick up a young running back like that. I wouldn't mind a team that starts with a D picking him up, but I don't know what the heck they're going to do, with their running back situation because they just leave me scratching my head the last couple of years. But good luck to all of them who got cut today. Hopefully it works out for them.
Now, I'm trying to think, is Riley Leonard the only quarterback that is on a roster right now?
Former Notre Dame guy, I believe so, because the last I heard, Ian Book is living here in South Bend, still looking for work right now.
Yes, I believe that is accurate as well. So I think he may be the only former Notre Dame quarterback that is in the league currently right now, which is very interesting. So throwing that out there.
Yep. All right. Well, we heard about Marcus Freeman's thoughts on CJ Carr in hour number 1 here in Rapid Fire. We're going to hear some comments from Marcus Freeman on Kenny Minchey, starting with how Mr. Minchey made the decision tough, ultimately, the decision that was made a week ago to go with Carr as QB1.
His decision-making, his arm strength, his leadership in his own way. You talk about a guy that's probably gained more trust from the start of spring ball to now than maybe anybody in our program. And he is a really, really good – he's good enough to be the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, right? And it was a tough decision because, like I said earlier, the statistics were very, very similar. And at the end of the day, I had to throw it out the window and make it on other factors.
All right. Ultimately, other factors, Vince.
It was interesting where he said he leads in his own way. I thought that was interesting. So maybe he's more of a leader by doing kind of a guy.
Yeah.
Which there's no right or wrong way to lead. I don't want to make it sound like that at all, but I have a feeling CJ Carr is more of the outgoing verbal leader than Kenny Minchey is, And again, that may not have been one of the the reasons for the decision or anything like that. I just thought it was interesting that he said leads in his own way. I think he's kind of a head down, blinders on. I'm going to do the job, work hard, that kind of a thing, which you want in a leader, by the way. I just found that interesting. That's what popped for me.
Yeah. Leadership looks a little bit different for everybody, I think. And you don't have to be, there are plenty of guys who are not like verbal rah-rah type guys. The biggest question is, can you take command? Do you command do you command respect from your players, your teammates when you're out there on the field? I think that's the biggest thing. And it sounds like he had that from the locker room and from everyone. But at the end of the day, he made it a tough decision. And that's like the very least that you can ask. I mean, that's what you want. You have two guys who are fully capable of doing the job. So, So it has been a week now, and I asked Marcus Freeman about how Minchey has responded since he was given the news last week.
Exactly what I thought it was going to be. There is a disappointment that is a natural human reaction that any competitor is going to have when, they're not named starter. And he was disappointed. But I knew after a day or so, he was going to use it to make him a better version of Kenny. And that's what I've seen. He's come out and he's practiced, he's prepared in a way that you expect Kenny Minchey to do. And that's a sign of maturity, right? Like, I didn't expect him to be happy with my decision, but I did expect after a day or so to see the maturity of Kenny Minchey in terms of being able to go back to work, understanding delayed gratification. That's why it's delayed gratification, right? Is that your job is to reach your full potential, and there's things you can do deliberately. You can use this as a motivator. You can use multiple different things as a motivator to put the work in, but he will be ready if his number is called, and I knew that when I made this decision.
All right, there you go. You're shaking your head, Vince. What do you think?
I'm not surprised. Kenny Minchey is a very mature kid. Maybe that's what he said earlier, what he was referencing when he talked about how guys would take the decision. You know what I mean? He knew. Look, of course he's not going to be happy. Why in the world would he be, right? And I'm
no
sure
competitor would be happy.
Right. No, Marcus Freeman wasn't anticipating that it was going to be a party when he got named second string. You know what I mean? Like, that was never going to be the case. But he also knows that it's big, like the team is bigger. It's bigger than the team. And while you can be disappointed in the individual race, now you figure out, okay, well, how do I help the team? I'm not surprised at all that that's the thought process of Kenny Minchey. And I would expect it to take a day or two for it to kind of like,
exactly,
have to get through
that's tough
that.
because you've just gone for essentially since last spring. You're sharing reps, you're getting number ones, you're battling for this job for months, basically, not just the first couple of weeks of training camp, but essentially since the offseason, as soon as last season ended and the offseason began, Kenny Minchey was in a race to try to win this thing. And he was one of the top two guys coming out of the spring, and he was battling it out all training camp long. And it would be tough, be really tough, because now you have to settle into something completely different. But now what he can do for the team is to be ready week in and week out for like if and when his number is called, because it can happen at any time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I'm sure that as the ultimate professional that he is, he will be that, and he will be ready to go. And what he decides to do when the season's over has nothing to do with how he prepares every day and gets ready for the season and all of those different things. So doesn't surprise me at all. He should have been ticked off when he didn't win the job, but now he gets refocused. And how does he help the team? That's Kenny Minchey in a nutshell.
Yes. So we had a question in the first hour of the show. We were talking about the Miami rivalry and all that kind of stuff. And I am Tenzin says they've still played Miami more than BC and Stanford, though, right? So I know you've looked this up.
I have.
I'm going to guess they've played, I'll say, I haven't looked this up. So this is, I'm guessing here on the spot. I'll say they played Stanford, then Miami, then BC in that order, amount of times.
Correct on Stanford. They've played Stanford 37 times.
Okay.
They have played Miami 27 times.
27.
And they've played Boston College 27 times.
Oh, exactly. Dead heat.
Dead heat. The difference is it's 18-8-1 for Miami, and I believe it was 18-9 for Boston College. So no tie.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, basically going back to about the time the Notre Dame Miami series ended in 1990, that's where Notre Dame and Stanford started playing each other more often. It hasn't been every year since then, but I believe most of those meetings against Stanford have come in that window, because you go back, it was like 97, 98 when the alternating with USC at the end of the season in October began. So like you look at that, that's 27, 28 years ago at this point. That's where the majority of those meetings against Stanford have come from.
Yeah, 100%. And so, and they've got trophies for those two games and all of that. Like, look, we can have the same. We've had this conversation a million times about whether those are rivalries and whether they're not and all of those kinds of different things. But to the point of Miami, they played 10 more times against Stanford than they have against Miami.
Yeah, that's true.
So
whether or not you consider Stanford a big Notre Dame rival, they've actually played them more than they've played Miami.
Right. Correct.
And more recently, obviously.
Right.
But it was only fairly recently that ever became a what would you call it?
Rivalry,
quote unquote rivalry.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I put up the hand quotes on
fairly
that one.
competitive. That's what I was looking in that Harbaugh Shaw era. And like obviously Walsh beat them, back in the early 90s and all that kind of stuff, and upset and those kind of things. But it never, Notre Dame Stanford never even got to the degree of like bitterness of even Notre Dame Boston College, because like that was fairly chippy as well, because of the whole like the only two FBS Catholic schools going head to head and all that stuff. Before the agreement with the ACC, Notre Dame and BC used to play each other almost every year, and that was much more a rivalry, I think, in those years.
Agreed.
And that's, again, kind of faded away because of the fact that they don't play all the time. So the first depth chart of the season that was released today lists the right guard situation as Gerby Lambert or Sullivan Absher. So is there a chance that both could play this week? Here's Marcus Freeman.
Both could be involved in the game plan. We have to make a final decision here probably after our Tuesday and Wednesday practice. Who's going to go out first, but it could be a situation you might see them both.
All right, Vince, so what do you think? Scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances that we see both Lambert and Absher play Sunday night?
I want to say it's fairly low, but not impossible, right? I do think that one has outshined the other, but one has been battling, some nagging injuries as well. And so maybe they want to give them both a shot in game time, scenarios. And I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that as long as they primarily play the guy that's playing the best. And I don't care who that is, as long as they're playing the guy who's playing the best. You know what I mean? So I would be okay with it. I don't know how prominent it is going to be, but something to keep an eye on. So I'm going to say like a 3, 2.5, 3. I don't want to shut the door on it, but I don't think it's better than 50-50.
That's kind of what I'm thinking as well. I'd put it down in that 3-4 range. Like maybe you see both of them. It feels like, as he said, they kind of got to get that completely solidified in the next couple of days, figure out who the number one is going to be. And you just don't see offensive linemen rotating that much. And I think that you want to find that consistency, especially in game one with all these other factors, first time starting quarterback, and the fact that you do need that running game and the protection of the quarterback as well. I think that it would just be a little bit more confusing if you're out there alternating your right guard.
Yeah. I mean, and look, you can do it. Notre Dame has done it in the past, right? They rotate when they won the Joe Moore Award, they had 2 basically starting right guards, right? But it's not the norm, and you have to finesse it the right way, and you have to go into a game, in my opinion, with both guys knowing exactly what is about to happen.
Yeah.
So there's no question marks, throughout the game. You got to know exactly what's happening.
We haven't talked a whole lot about, again, we haven't talked at all. I said that earlier. We haven't talked a whole lot about the depth chart. We haven't talked at all about the depth chart before now, talking about the right guard, hearing that comment. The depth chart was released today. Did anything catch your eye / surprise you anywhere that you saw?
The or for Pauling and Greathouse was a little eye-catching, I would say. I think they'll be on the field at the same time, a good amount of time. Who starts, I think, is irrelevant. I don't think it really matters. You know what I mean? I know that they'll move Greathouse around. So, but that was interesting that they put it that way on the depth chart. So that one stuck out to me for sure. What else stuck out to me?
Well, hold on. Let me just continue with the wide receivers here.
Okay.
For just a second, just so everybody knows maybe who hasn't seen it.
Gotcha.
So at the X receiver, Malachi Fields, no surprise, number 1. Micah Gilbert is number 2. Cam Williams, who we always get the questions about, is listed as the number 3 X receiver. Again, I don't think that is a big surprise to any of us, who watched anything, been out there, or talked about it. But a lot of people, because of the star rating that Cam Williams had, I think still expected him to be a little bit higher. But as of right now, he is number 3 at that X behind Fields and Gilbert.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a very, very talented young man, and I think it's great that he's on the depth chart. I don't think that they're going to go 9 deep, So yeah, so it's great that he's on there. I think that's a huge boost, for his confidence and all of that kind of stuff. I think that's massive, right? But I also think that he's still, a couple of players maybe being injured away from being on the field on a regular basis.
Yeah. And then Jordan Faison and KK Smith are the top 2 at the Z receiver. Elijah Burris, the freshman, is the number 3 receiver there. And then, as you said, Greathouse or Will Pauling, as the slot, and Soldata is the number 3 guy there. So I'm not sure that it's a huge surprise that Elijah Burris is number 3 at the Z receiver. KK Smith kind of finally sort of making some headway after the early injuries he had in his career and working his way, it looks like, into the rotation. It sounds like he is part of that top 6. I still think we see some Elijah Burris, but we had those comments last week from Mike Denbrock about, can the guy just learn the playbook? Those kind of things. I think that there's still a role from him in some situations where he sees the field. I just don't think he's ready to be an every down wide receiver just yet.
Yeah, I kind of expected to see an or between KK Smith and Elijah Burris, if I'm being honest. And that didn't happen. So, I mean, good on KK Smith for edging out Elijah Burris. And now Elijah Burris has some work to do. You know what I mean? So I do agree with you that there's a place for Elijah Burris, just not sure it's in game 1.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, so you were about to go some other places with the depth chart. What else?
I was. Look, Nolan James Jr. made the depth chart, right? I predicted he was potentially going to be number 3. That didn't happen. Aeneas Williams is solidly in that spot. But no Jabron Payne on the running back depth chart. And so Nolan James was able to jump Jabron Payne, which I thought was interesting. And a lot of people had some questions about, I would say.
Yep. J. Love, Price, Williams, and James as the running backs. Jordan Faison is the punt returner to open camp. I think it was Faison or Pauling was most likely who was going to be.
It's an or, baby.
Oh, it is listed as an or. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't see my or down there.
So
we could see both of them potentially.
I looked at the special teams depth chart. I wasn't going to jump right there, but I did think it was interesting that every single specialist that they have on the roster is on the depth chart.
True.
So because you've got Marcello is the kickoff guy, which I think makes sense. He's got a stronger leg than Noah Burnett.
Mm-hmm.
Save all your energy for place kicking, Noah. Like, I'm cool with that. So they've got Marcello kicking off. They've got Noah as the place kicker. And then they've got a 2 deep at punter, which I thought was interesting. That's not something that you see very often.
Schmidt number 2 behind Wendell.
You don't see an actual depth chart when it comes to specialists. You know what I mean? They don't list anybody as the backup place kicker, but they have 2 punters on the depth chart. So Eric Schmidt's making some noise there with Thor at punter. So I thought that was interesting.
We'll take a look at the defensive depth chart after we take a quick timeout. I got 2 short breaks. We're going to take the rest of the way as we continue with Rapid Fire and Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Vince just kicking it back.
I'm binge watching, Sean Stiers. Binge watching.
Are you still on Only Murders?
Yeah, man. I'm in season 4, episode 5. So I'm like halfway through season 4.
Remind me who died in season 4.
Saz.
Oh yes, Saz. That's right.
Yeah. That. Yep.
Like I said, there've been so many murders in that building. It's hard to keep track of.
I didn't even know there was another tower to the building until this season.
I know. And all of a sudden, there's all this crazy stuff going on in this other tower. They had a lot of good cameos from the other tower.
There has been good cameos throughout the entire run of this show. Like there are some really famous people who have, really.
And there's some more coming up in the new season.
Really?
So yeah, I'm trying to think. It might be like Renee Zellweger is going to be in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice.
Her and a few other people. Like, show keeps getting more popular. So, all these famous people want to get in. So, yeah.
It was funny. The actress that plays Martin Short's girlfriend, Loretta. Her name is escaping Meryl Streep. So, she was obviously singing and, doing the whole thing. My wife's like, wow, I didn't know she could sing. I looked at her and I go, Mamma Mia. She's like, oh yeah, that's right.
I never saw Mamma Mia. I forgot.
Really?
In that, yeah.
The first one I thought was good. The second one was a bit of a stretch, but it's it's good music. So
yeah. ABBA. That's right.
It's good stuff.
All right, let's continue with some stuff for Marcus Freeman. We'll get back into the depth chart here.
Yes.
As Marcus Freeman asked him what he's seen from the defensive tackles, some relatively unproven guys that tell him they're ready for bigger roles against what they anticipate being a physical Miami offensive line this week.
Defensive tackle position was probably the biggest question mark I had coming into training camp, and has probably given me the most conviction of a position group as any on our team. And, credit Coach Washington first for keeping that group together, driven. But, there's multiple guys. You hear about as Riley Mills and Howard Cross, and there's multiple guys in that room that are going to play and have played and practiced as well as any position group in fall camp. And they're all different ages. There's transfers. There's a guy like Jason Onye that I've spoke about previously that it's a great reminder of development. He's playing as well at that position as anybody I've seen since I've been here. I mean, that's a high compliment for him, but that's a credit to the work he's put in. Donnie Heinisch, right? And I told him wearing number 41, he's got big shoes to fill because of his brother. And I came in when his brother was here. And I had 1 year with Kurt. Don't tell Kurt I said this, but Donnie's making me forget about the older 41, which is what Kurt would want, right? Kurt would want that. And Donnie's practicing as well as anybody. Gabe Rubio, Jared Dawson. I was a transfer coming into a new place, learning a new scheme, new expectations. His first practice to where he's at now, it's been tremendous. It's been tremendous in terms of being able to handle the way we practice, the expectations, what we want out of him. And so there's I speak with a lot of confidence when I talk about that defensive tackle group. I think we're going to see some big things out of them.
Okay, Vince. So that answer says blank to you.
It gives me more confidence because I think we've talked about the fact that the defensive tackles has been a position that we were kind of like, well, believe it when we see it kind of a deal.
Yeah.
He said that he's got the most conviction of any position. Now, could be coach speak, obviously.
Right. He just went a minute and a half talking about defensive tackles there and being very specific about those guys. Like if he doubts them, he's gonna hem and haw and give you a little bit of a word salad that's done in about 15 seconds, I think. He went on and on raving about these guys. So I've got to feel pretty good about that, listening to that.
I mean,
I don't think that was just a bunch of blustery BS.
How can we not trust Marcus Freeman at this point? You know what I mean? And so, I am not the kind of person that is going to blindly be like, trust the coaches, but at this point, if he's going to wax poetic about the defensive line and specifically the tackles and what they've been doing, Okay, cool. Then I'm really not worried about Sunday if that's the case.
Yeah, if those guys are really that ready to go, because I know Miami, I know they've got a good offensive line. I'm not really sure about what they've got at running back. They're going to want to run the ball though to help out Carson Beck. Similarly to how obviously Notre Dame wants to help out CJ Carr. Same but different because of the fact that Beck is more experienced. But if those guys are that ready to go, I feel very good about that. And Nick A is asking in the YouTube chat, are we better on defensive line this year than last year? I mean, that's to be seen.
Yeah,
But again, like listening to that answer, Marcus Freeman feels much more confident about it than I think he thought he was going to be coming in to training camp based on what he's seen from those guys over the last month.
Yeah, I would say that going into this year, they have less name recognition, but I do think that they're deeper.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. They fly under the radar a little bit. Okay.
But he talked about development as well, and I agree with that because I think every year, whatever questions you had about Al Washington with that first year with some inconsistent play on the defensive line, with every year we've seen much more consistency out of these guys on the defensive line, whether it's outside or inside. You've seen guys continue to be developed in this program.
Right.
So the depth chart, Onye, Rubio, Mullins, and then Heinisch, Dawson, Hughes at nose. And as Go Irish Nate says in the YouTube chat, no Armel Mukum. He says apparently Brian Driscoll brought it up earlier in his show this afternoon. Sevillano also not on that depth chart, and that's 3 guys at each position. These are just 2 guys, still relatively young, but both Mukum and Sevillano, like they had opportunities last year because of those injuries to Cross and Mills and just didn't make moves, and just still where we are right now have not been able to make moves beyond that. What do you think?
This is the first time that I can remember them going 3 deep on the depth chart. Maybe I'm misremembering or whatever, but they usually go 2 on the depth chart. And so the fact that they went 3 deep means they're pretty confident in a good number of guys. And if you're off of there, then these guys must be playing pretty well, because I think that we had a lot of confidence in some of these guys that are not on the depth chart. So, the competition was fierce. And if these are the 6 guys at defensive tackle that are on there, then okay, let's roll kind of a situation as far as I'm concerned.
And I think that if there are 3 guys on there, that probably means there are 3 guys capable, at each position, 6 total guys who are able to play, and we'll probably see to some extent, especially if it is hot and muggy. Because, I know all the talk about the rain and everything else, but if it is truly hot out there, then you're going to want to rotate as many guys as you want. And again, that's going to help you out quite a bit as that game goes on and that offensive line is trying to push on you a little bit.
They literally have 12 guys listed on the defensive line. 12.
Yeah. Because then you look at the defensive ends, Traore, they still listed as the Viper, even though they said they were right and left end.
Right. Yeah.
Traore, Tuialamaka, or Jordan Botelho on one side, and then the other side is, where did it go? There it is. Bryce Young, Josh Burnham, Logan Thomas on the other. So I'll ask you this, first of all, fill in the blank. It's blank that Marcus Freeman announced today that Jordan Botelho will be available to face Miami this weekend.
To me, not surprised by that. I have, when the opportunities that we've had to watch, he looked pretty into it, and, it was early on in camp that we were able to see, and there's still a week and a half, there's still a week away from Sunday. I anticipated that he would be in some form or fashion able to play and contribute. Yeah. I didn't think he was going to be ready to start necessarily. But I am not in any way, like, there's a lot of people that are really surprised that Botelho is available, so to speak. I'm just
And he's
not.
about a month and a half ahead of schedule based on what they
Yeah.
were originally saying. Remember, he tore a pec
Yep.
mid-June, early June. They were saying 4 months at that point, but he's been practicing
That's the thing.
since
Like,
day one.
yeah, if
of
we
camp.
had no availability at all to practice, and I didn't see him running around and doing some of the things that he was doing, I would be surprised. And so I'm not surprised that fans are surprised. I didn't get to see him, right? But
Yeah.
watching him work against the bags and work against the sleds and work against some teammates and things like that, I was like, oh, he'll be okay. Like, he'll be ready. Because at that time, it was a month away, and or a little more than a month. It was like 5 weeks. And so I was like, oh, he'll be ready in 5 weeks. So this is not surprising to me, but it is also a huge deal for this team to have him available in this game, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Because he's overcome 2 injuries in less than a year now, between
Yeah.
the knee last year in
Well-
September and now the torn pec in June.
And look, he was playing the best football of his life when he got hurt last year in the 24 season. If he can pick up where he left off, then this is a huge boost to this defense. Absolutely huge.
Yep.
Is he going to be able to play at that level in game one? That remains to be seen, but I'm not surprised that he's available.
Will linebacker Jalen Sneed, then Jaden Osbury, then Madden Faremo, Mike linebacker Drake Bowen, Kingston Biliamu Asa, and Faremo also listed at number 3 there at linebacker. I don't think any real shocks there. I know that you still want to see Mr. Sneed kind of prove it. I'm pretty confident just because I think we've seen year over year improvement from Jalen Sneed these last couple years. And based on what we saw in the spring and based on, some of the stuff that we got to see during training camp, I'm confident that he's going to be ready to go. And I don't think Max Bull is going to put him out there in a starting situation if he's not 100% confident either.
If the switch has gone on for Mr. Sneed, then this team's going to be really good. And having him out there is just fine. Like, I'm cool with it because I know how talented he is.
Right.
Like, he is physically gifted. He is fast. He is sudden. He is all the things that you want in a linebacker. And so if he has mentally flipped the switch where he can be counted on down in and down out, then awesome. He's going to be fantastic, right? And if you're bringing KVA off the bench, you know what I mean, in a rotation situation, I mean, goodness gracious. Then
linebackers are going to be,
Yeah,
exactly. Great question, Stymie. He's asking where Tay lands in the group. Looking forward to seeing him fly around. So the safeties, you're going to have Adon Schuler starting at boundary. Jalen Stroman, the Virginia Tech transfer, is going to start on the field. Tay Johnson is number 2 behind Stroman, and then Ethan Long. And then at boundary, Schuler, Talich, Long number 3 there as well. So Ethan Long may be a little bit of a surprise name to be.
Yeah, that's not somebody we've talked about.
No. Corners, Leonard Moore, Dallas Golden, Chance Tucker on one side, Christian Gray, Mark Zachary, Cree Thomas on the other. So 2 true freshmen at number 2 with Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary. But both of those guys, especially Zachary, stuff we heard about Zachary during training camp, interceptions galore. So,
yeah, not really a surprise there. Not really a surprise that Jalen Stroman got the start across.
Nope.
That doesn't surprise me in any way. And look, there's going to be something for Tay to do. I'm sure he'll be a starter on special teams. I'm sure he'll rotate in at safety. But what is that rotation going to look like? Are they going to be 4 deep? Are they going to be 3 deep? I think that's a question going in. But I'm not overly surprised, that he's not listed as a starter right off the bat.
Yeah. Take our final break and then back to wrap things up here tonight on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding it down, Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com with Vince D'Addario, Sean Stiers. Talking about Notre Dame's depth chart. We've kind of been going through some of the stuff here in this second hour. Forgot to mention the nickel. Saw somebody asking about it in the YouTube chat. Devontae Smith, number 1. Number 2, Carson Hobbs. Number 3, Ben Minnick at nickel. No surprises at the top.
No.
At number 3. To your point, they listed pretty much 3 deep across the board on the defense.
It's a new thing, right? Don't they usually go 2 deep on almost everything?
Yeah, I don't remember it being 3 deep like this.
Yeah, the only time I remember there being really 3 is at like running back or something like that, or quarterback. And I don't know that you mentioned, of course, Tyler Buckner listed as the 3rd string quarterback on the depth chart.
Oh, good call. Good call. I did gloss over that, didn't I?
Yeah, so they went 3 and they went 4 at running back. So I mean, this is a hefty depth chart, to be honest with you. Lots of names to kind of sift through when it's all said and done.
Yes. Well, we mentioned earlier Sam Hartman waived today by the Washington Commanders. Riley Leonard, though, still with the Indianapolis Colts. Do you buy or sell Riley Leonard starting for the Colts at some point this season?
Oh, it's a huge buy. I think he will start at some point. Maybe it's a spot start because of injury. Look, Danny Dimes is not going to make it through the whole season. He's just not going to.
And neither is Anthony Richardson.
And Anthony Richardson will just be tapping the side of his helmet. He'll be pulling himself out.
Right.
So, I absolutely buy that he will get at least one start in the NFL. It may not go well. We'll see how it goes, but I will say that the bar is set extremely low for Notre Dame quarterbacks in the NFL recently, as far as actual NFL starts in the regular season. So,
yeah.
I feel good about it, and I will tune in if that is the case.
I saw Brian Baldinger doing a video on Riley Leonard, and look, I know it's preseason, and he's going against guys who are also lower on the depth chart, but he's looked pretty sharp in everything that I've seen of him, and that quarterback position has just not been good for the Colts, and I think that it speaks to it, the fact that they've got Danny Dimes starting at quarterback, and the fact that is the case, even if it's December and like the season is out of control or whatever, I think Riley Leonard, it's a big buy for me. Riley Leonard is going to be the Colts starting quarterback, and I said it after I think the first or second preseason game. I think by next year he's going to end up being the guy for them down there in Indianapolis.
Listen, the price will be right, obviously, because he's going to be a lower drafted quarterback. They don't owe him a ton of money. He's going to be on a rookie contract for quite some time. And they've got holes to fill across the board. So, putting your faith in a guy like Riley Leonard, who you couldn't draw up a better guy, obviously, off the field than Riley Leonard. Mm-hmm. And he's going to literally give you everything he's got, when it comes to playing. So I don't see why they wouldn't. I really don't. They spent a bunch of money on Danny Dimes to come in. They've spent a bunch of money on Richardson, from the draft. They could do a lot worse. Let's just put it that way. They could do a lot worse.
There's no reason not to give him a look at some point,
right?
Because again, I think that they will. I think he ends up out there on the field playing significant time for him at some point this season. I'm not saying September, October, but I would not be surprised later in the season, the later it goes.
Love it.
Okay, so the opponent this week is Miami, and yesterday we did the over-under win total for the Georgia Bulldogs. Let's do the Hurricanes today. We're gonna guess Miami's over-under win total as set by FanDuel Sportsbook. And a reminder to the YouTube chat: do not shout it out. You can give out your guesses.
Guess in. Yes.
If you know what the actual number is, don't tell us, because we're going through the schedule. We're trying to guess what FanDuel has set as the over-under. So, of course, the Hurricanes open the season this weekend against Notre Dame. Then they have Bethune-Cookman, followed by South Florida. And then a run of Florida teams. Bethune-Cookman, South Florida, then the Florida Gators, then at Florida State, Louisville, Stanford, at SMU, Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh. What's the over-under this season for the Miami Hurricanes?
Well, Georgia was at 9.5 yesterday. I am taking that into account here.
Okay.
But here's the thing. They have obviously a tough opener with Notre Dame, top 10 matchup, right? The next challenge that they will have is Florida towards the end of September. And who knows what Florida's going to be at that point. Either they're going to be moving up or they're going to be moving down. I don't see them kind of staying in the same spot. You know what I mean?
No middle ground. Yeah.
I just don't. So maybe you could call that a toss-up game at this point, because right now Florida's 15 and Miami's 10. Then you've got Louisville, Stanford, SMU, Syracuse, NC State. Like you get your ACC run in here. They don't have to make, a big long trip. They're not going out to Stanford. They're not going out to Cal or anything like that. All of their away games I think their furthest away game, if I'm looking at this correctly, is going to be SMU to Dallas. That's their farthest trip that they've got. So this is a very favorable schedule, in my opinion, for Miami. I think this is a potential 10-win team. I will stick with the 9.5, because if Georgia's 9.5 and they had a much tougher games, I'm going to say Miami's 9.5 as well. That's my thought process. What do you think?
I agree with you. Brian NY is very low. He's saying 6.5. He's not very favorable with the Hurricanes. Andre is saying 7.5 and take the over. I think with that schedule, I see easily 8 wins in there and what should be 9 wins. Because I'm hedging on the higher end like you. I think it could be 10.5, but they won 10 games last year. Overall, I think it's going to be 9.5. I think they're setting it at 9.5 is what I think that it is. Andre's saying 9-3 at best, at worst 6-6. I don't see them being 6-6 against that schedule. I think I think 8-9 is worst case.
They don't play Clemson. They don't, and again, as the chat pointed out, they don't leave the state of Florida until November 1st, Sean.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty good scheduling right there. So I think they've got a lot of things in their corner, and I also think that their ACC schedule isn't that hard. I think they could very well potentially be playing for the ACC championship against Clemson.
I think it's 9.5. I think it's 9.5. Let's see. I'm opening it up right now. It's a lot. 9.5. Now, here's what's interesting. It is 9.5. The over has plus 126 odds. The under has minus 154 odds.
Interesting.
So they're seeing Miami as a 9-win team.
Yes.
And you've got better odds to take the over. Obviously, that's saying that they get 10 wins. So that would, theoretically mean they lose to Notre Dame and Florida and they win out otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, would you be overly surprised if that was the case? They do have a talented roster. They've got a veteran quarterback. There's a lot to like about this Miami team for sure, especially with this this schedule. This schedule is not a barn burner. I will say that.
Nope. I just realized we've also got to wrap things up here pretty quickly.
You're right.
Vince D'Addario, Sean Stiers. Vince will be back later in the week. Trevor's actually going to be in here with me tomorrow in some Bobby action as well. Great stuff tonight. We will talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.